Welcome, everyone, to our part two of the series, What You Should Know About False Prophet. This guy right here, we discussed in our first presentation. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about the questions that we addressed in or proposed to address in the first part. And so we hope it'll be a little bit more enlightening for you and you'll get a more complete picture of this man right here and his work in the last days, and also the kindred events that surround this work here and the general timeline of events and what happens in these last days. Before we begin, we ask that you kneel and pray, claim the promise of John 16:13, and he shall guide us into all truth. Let's begin. All right, so our next question was number four. When will he be taken out of the scene? Well, in the harvest chart, which as we mentioned many times, love to present, it shows a good synopsis of end time events in a pictorial form. We know that these things happen as they're shown. You've got the church purification, you got the church federation that happens after that. You have the false prophet in the two horned beast domain, United States, and then that spreads to the world where the woman sits upon the scarlet colored beast, and this proposal for the Sunday law and the way of worship goes to the world. And then, of course, this is when, after this time period, then soon it has the close of probation. And then we see the answer to our question. After the close of probation, of course, we read that in Revelation 19:20, the beast and false prophet are cast into a lake of fire. So we see that this is when the false prophet will be taken out of the scene after uh, the close of probation. There's no more uh, time for people to be saved. They all realize they've been tricked, hoodwinked by this false guy, and he's put to death. Yeah, we don't know the details, but according to the prophecy, the beast, which is the United States system more or less, and the false prophet are going to be destroyed. So that is the direct answer to the question. Let's go on to the next slide. All right, so that we have a little more illumination from the message. The power that is represented by this two-horned beast will identify itself with the false prophet, for together they are cast alive into the lake of fire, Revelation 19:20. From this it is plain to see that the wonders which the beast does in the sight of men, and by which he deceives them that dwell on the earth, Revelation 13:13 and 14, are wrought by the false prophet, Revelation 19:20, in the sight of the beast, Revelation 13:14. Clearly, then, the beast's civil authority, combined with the prophet's supernatural power, points to a union of beast and prophet, an affiliation of state and of church representatives. Having only two horns, not 10, the beast therefore depicts a local, not a universal government. Now, let's just stop there. We know that this system, this Sunday law system, starts the United States. So it's a local system first, USA. But then we know, as the chart shows and many references, that it expands to the world. That's when the woman sits upon the scarlet colored beast. Nevertheless, he will influence all Christendom. There we go. He will now, once the United States adopts the system, this influence will go to the world. Influence all Christendom to make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. That is, he will engineer a worldwide governmental setup in re-enthroning the principles of church state rule of ecclesiastical Rome. Being the restorer of these principles, he, along with the prophet, will become the world's chief dictator and shape not only the political and religious policies of the governments, but also the world's commerce. Oh, very interesting. He shall decree that no man might buy or sell save that he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Revelation 13:17. This beast represents a man who stands at the head of a nation and whose influence goes far and wide among the kings of the earth. He is further identified by a number, the mystical number 600, 3 score, and 6, Revelation 13:18 And again, this reference can be found in the track 12, page 26 to 27. So we make a note. The Sunday law starts first in the United States, then goes worldwide, largely by the influence of the false prophet and the 666 man, who is the head of the two-horned beast. So again, we go back to the answer that the false prophet's not going to work alone. He's going to be in conjunction with this very influential uh, person. It says there stands at the head of a nation whose influences go far and wide among the kings of the earth. Now, think about that for a minute, brethren. We're not saying again that our current president of the United States is that future 666 man, but we are going to say this. This president of ours, United States, has such great influence upon the kings of the earth today. Could it be that down the road, once the gigantic war happens, that influences multiplies 10 times? In other words, it's so strong after that war that because of the false prophet will give legitimacy to this 666 man, right? Because I don't think the 666 man, whoever it'll be, will not have the influence until the false prophet comes on the scene and gives all these, calling down fire from heaven and restoring people's maybe disfigured fingers, arms. I mean, just like Jesus, he's going to be an impersonator of Jesus in a way that will influence greatly this 666 man and therefore the world. So let's go on to the next slide. All right, question number 5. What group will go directly against him, that's Satan, for the souls of humanity? All right, now we have two scriptures that are just so beautiful, brethren. And once we read these, we were like amazed that this is showing the work of that group when that time comes, which will be right after Ezekiel, right after Ezekiel 9 and after that gigantic war of Zechariah 14. So we read in Jeremiah 51, verse 20 to 23. You are my battle axe and weapons of war, for with you I will break the nation in pieces. With you I will destroy kingdoms. With you I will break in pieces the horse and its rider. With you I will break in pieces the chariot and its rider. With you also I will break in pieces man and woman. With you I will break in pieces old and young. With you I will break in pieces young man and maiden. With you also I will break in pieces the shepherd and his flock. With you I will break in pieces the farmer and his yoke of oxen. And with you I will break in pieces governors and rulers. Wow, brethren. This group is going to have such power that they're going to be able to break in pieces all that you read right here. In other words, destroy the influences of these, kingdoms, these people, whoever it might be, governors, rulers. They're no longer going to have the strong influence that the current globalist system gives them, right? So this is a powerful promise. Now we find our second quote, and that's found in Joel 2:1 to 11. Blow the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. That's it right there, brethren. We are giving a warning in Zion, the church, and we're sounding an alarm for our brethren in SDA church. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming, for it is at hand, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, like the morning clouds spread over the mountains. A people come, great and strong, the like of whom has never been, nor will there ever be such after them, even for many successive generations. A fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is like the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them desolate wilderness. Wow. Brethren, let's stop right there real quick. Before them is like the Garden of Eden. What is that? That means this group is heading for the kingdom. They're heading for the Holy Land. We'll read more about that later. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses, and like swift steeds, so they run. With a noise like chariots over mountains they leap. Mountaintops they leap. Like the noise of a flaming fire that devours the stubble, like a strong people set in battle array. Before them the people writhe in pain. All faces are drained of color. They run like mighty men. They climb the wall like men of war. Everyone marches in formation, and they do not break ranks. They do not push one another. Everyone marches in his own column. Now, listen, that is beautiful because this group, brethren, we're going to disclose here in a second, this group is totally unified. They don't break ranks. They're in all of one accord, just like the Pentecost was. The people were of one accord, and you saw power going forth. Well, this end time power, the second Pentecost, as it were, will be tremendously more than the first Pentecost. Though they lunge between the weapons, they are not cut down. Nothing will hurt them. You aim a gun at these people, good luck. The bullet's going to drop off like a board. It's going to fall right down. They run to and fro in the city. They run on the wall. They climb into the houses. They enter at the windows like a thief. The earth quakes before them. The heavens tremble. The sun and moon grow dark, and the stars diminish their brightness. The Lord gives voice before his army, for his camp is very great. For strong is the one who executes his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. Who can endure it? Joel 2, 1-3. Brethren, this is describing the great and dreadful day and what takes place right after it. All right, so we see from those two scriptures, Jeremiah and Joel, a perfect description of this group that we're going to show right now. The 144,000. Now, here's a pictorial representation of Jesus on Mount Zion and the 144,000 standing with him. Now, in track 4, page 39, we have a great description of this. When God has taken his people through this refining, purifying process, Testimonies, volume 3, page 541, which is Ezekiel 9, and has brought them forth as fine gold 7 times purified, with the dross burned out forever, then he will be able to fulfill his promise. And that's found in Hosea 2:18. And in that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field and with the fowls of heaven and with the creeping things on the ground. And I will break the bow and the sword and the battle out of the earth, and will make them to lie down safely. Isaiah 2, verse 8. Hosea 2, verse 18. Again, track 4, page 39. Now, brother, what this is talking about here, lie down safely. If you go to Isaiah chapter 11 and 12, you will read about this pre-millennial kingdom. Now, he's not talking about the heavenly kingdom, brethren. Just make sure we understand that. This is the pre-millennial kingdom. This is the one that happens in our time, in our day, while this earth exists. And so this kingdom will not be a worldwide kingdom. No, it will be located in the Holy Land. And we'll read further about that. But it's where these 144,000 are going to go back. The land is like Garden of Eden before them. They're going to go back to this land that's going to be restored after that gigantic war. Miraculously, the Lord's going to restore that land, and they're going to go back there, set up the gospel kingdom. All right, set up the gospel kingdom, so for which the message will go out, counter the false system that we see is being established by the false prophet and the 666 man. All right, number 6. Why will many living SDA members not witness his work? Well, we know in 1 Peter 4:17, for the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin at us, what shall be the end of them that obey not the gospel of God? So we see that in the end times, when the judgment begins, it will start first with his house, his people that are proclaiming to be God's people. Well, we know from the scriptures that there's only one people, Laodicea, that's talked about in chapter 3 of Revelation. Laodicea is the one proclaiming to be God's people in the last days, because they say they keep the commandments and they keep the testimony of Jesus, which is the spirit of prophecy. Okay, this is the claim that the Seventh-day Adventist Church makes. And so we as SDA believe that we are the true church of God today, despite the abominations, but soon the purification will come upon us first. Okay, so then now we have a commentary, track 9, page 55, about that verse. According to Revelation 7, the 144,000 are of the 12 tribes, Israel and Judah, not of the Gentiles. Also, both the marking and uh, slaughtering, slaughtering, according to Ezekiel 9, are to take place in both Israel and Judah, the church, where the harvest judgment commences. And if the judgment, asks the apostle, first begins at us, what shall be the end of them that obey not the gospel? That's talking about what shall be the end of the people outside of the SDA church. What shall be the end of them? 1 Peter 4:17. In the culminative light, focusing on this point, under 44,000, the first fruits, stands forth clearly as Christian Jews who are found in the church, SDA church, at the commencement of the harvest. In this respect, they are not defiled with women. They have, in other words, from their birth been God's people, Jews, not defiled with heathen worship. They follow the Lamb wheresoever he goeth, with the result that when he stands on Mount Zion, they too stand there. Track 9, page 55. Now let's touch little bit about this first fruits and uh, the birth the birth heritage or the birth lineage of the 144,000. Now we don't have a report here, but we do have it in another video that the the bloodline has been preserved all the way down to this day. God knows his bloodline, and the people that are called into the church by the Lord have that bloodline. They don't know it, of course, but God knows it. And the people that do not have that bloodline are not being called by God into the SDA church. They're being called into the church by the adversary. How do we know that? Well, we know that from Revelation 12. The church sent in a flood into God's people. In other words, Satan has decided to overrun the SDA church with a flood of terrors, flood of people that should not be into the church. They're coming in for the loaves and fishes. They're coming in for their idols. They like a certain person that speaks, and that's why they come into the church. They're coming in for social reasons. They're coming in for to lessen the guilt of their conscience. All these different reasons. This is not a true reason to come in. You know why? They don't love the truth. You have to love the truth. That's why you come into this church. And the truth is that the Lord's message, the final message of Elijah, is where his people follow him wherever so he goeth. And that leads you right down into believing the shepherd's rod message. So this is a direct plea to the SDA church. You got to stop. You got to stop ignoring. You're not going to be guiltless by saying, "Oh, I wasn't ever aware of it." No, you're going to be charged for watching TV all the time instead of picking up that Bible and letting the Lord speak to you through the words. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. All right, so we have more from manuscript releases, page 260. Study the 9th chapter of Ezekiel. These words will be what? Literally fulfilled. Yet the time is passing and the people are asleep. They refuse to humble their souls and be converted. Oh, brother, we see that so much. The pride of our leaders, the SDA leaders, is just tremendous pride. You want to bring up an issue about their teachings and they'll ignore you. They won't address it. I am so and so. I don't need you. I know all about the message. Terrible. Not a great while longer will the Lord bear with the people who have such great important truths revealed to them, but who refuse to bring these truths into their individual experience. Time is short. God is calling. Will you hear? Will you receive his message? Will you receive his message? We'll get to that. Will you be converted before it's too late? Soon, very soon, every case will be decided for eternity. Again, manuscript releases, page 260. Now, Remember, brother, this is not the shepherd's rod saying this. This is Ellen White. This is the spirit of prophecy. All right. So the shepherd rod got much of its message through the Bible, first and foremost, through Ellen White's spirit prophecy, secondarily. So, you hear this all the time. Oh, you shepherd rod people, you're always talking about Ezekiel 9. You're making everything, trying to scare the people. All that. No, spirit prophecy talks about it, brethren. This is just one scripture or reference. We got many from spirit prophecy. Of course, Malachi 4:5. This is the question. Will you receive his message? Okay. Now we'll see what that message is. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, and he will turn the hearts of the father to the children, and the hearts of the children to the fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with a curse. Well, he will strike the earth with a curse if you don't accept the message. That is Ezekiel 9, brethren. All right, Testimonies to Ministers, page 475. Prophecy must be fulfilled. The Lord says, behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Now let's look at this closely. Somebody is to come in the spirit and power of Elijah. And when he appears, men may say, you are too earnest. You do not interpret the scriptures in the proper way. Let me tell you how to teach your message. Oh, brethren, we went over this so many times that this prophecy right here of Sister White, Spirit Prophecy, says that somebody is to come. And what is he to do? Well, obviously, when you look at that, he's going to interpret Scripture. He's going to bring a message. And this message is not going to be received. The SDA leaders are going to say, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. Let me show you the right way. You're teaching wrongly. Let me show you the correct way. All right? This has been fulfilled to a T. To a T. All right? We see this all over the SDA church. If not publicly, privately. You confront the head pastor, you confront the big boys. We're talking about Stephen Bohr, we're talking about Mark Finley, Doug Batchelor. You confront them privately, and they'll give you an excuse why the rod is wrong. Why, no, a lot of it's incorrect, and therefore I can't teach it, da, da, da. So, brethren, this prophecy has been fulfilled. So that's, again, proof that it's true, right? Somebody is to come. All right, so the Lord is not slack. He has given us this message. Therefore, when we read Manuscript Releases, page 260, will you receive his message? What message? The Elijah message, brethren. The Elijah message. If you don't receive it, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. And you're not going to be able to see even the Sunday law formation. You'll be gone. So this is the very first vision, early writings, page 13 to 20, I believe it is, where Ellen White saw a group of people making it to the kingdom. And what was that number? 144,000. She didn't see any larger number. I saw a great multitude that was walking a straight and narrow path, and all of them made it to the kingdom. No, brethren. This is the vision she saw. And this is talking about the SDA church. All right? 144,000 on a straight and narrow to the kingdom. So in Revelation 7, we know that that's very, very true, that of all the tribes, all the church, there will be 144,000 sealed. Now that's, as we went over many times, that's startling. But we brought this argument up before. We brought this truth up before, that yes, Noah's day, there's probably millions of people on the earth. How many people were saved? 8 people. In the time of the Exodus with Moses, they say 1 million, maybe plus, were on their way to the Holy Land. How many above the age of 20? Excuse me. How many under the age of 20 made it to the kingdom? 0, brother. zero. Or sorry. Oh boy, I always get mixed up with that line of thinking. Two people made it from the Exodus. Two people made it over the age of 20. The others were not held to account, but over 20, you were held to account, and two people made it out of those millions. So the point being is that when people argue the fact that, wait a minute, there's 8 million or 20 some odd million in the SDA church today, you're telling me only 144,000 are going to make it? Brother, look at our history. Look at God's history in dealing with his worldwide judgments, with his vast uh, judgments concerning many, many people. That's the history. So it's not unlike the Lord. And furthermore, remember this, the Lord does not want just 144,000. That's all that's going to be found to accept the message. Everybody else is denying the message. And the Lord's got to cut off a certain period of time. He's got to make the time come to an end for you to accept it. You can't go on forever and ever because it'll just waste time. And he's got to get his kingdom set up for humanity. So let's go on to the next slide. All right. What must humanity do to avoid Satan's pitfalls of soul destruction? All right. So let's briefly look at this again. We know that Satan's going to put a plan in. Now, remember, the plan starts here first, the church federation. Now, why was that? Well, because they just witnessed the Ezekiel 9, Zechariah 14 war, particularly Zechariah 14 war, that will perplex these Sunday keepers. Why? Because they've always taught that the circle of fire protecting the unbelieving Jews there today will exist until the Lord comes. In other words, they've promulgated that the land of Israel today, with many, many, the vast majority of unbelieving Jews there today, God will protect. All right. And then when they see the Zechariah 14, where these unbelievers are driven out, they're going to be in a mass confusion. And they're going to think, oh, we lost to the communists, Russia, China, Iran, all these companies defeated us in the holy war in the land of Israel. What are we going to do, Lord? They're all going to come together and plead. This is the embryo of that system. All right, the Sunday law system, and that's going to start soon after the Zechariah 14 war and Ezekiel 9. Now, in this time period, we went over this many times before. 144,000 are being called back to the kingdom. All right, so they're going to set up the great gospel kingdom while this church federation is taking place. And then, of course, the satanic plan is for this guy right here, a false prophet, to come on, confirm the theological argument that we must get back to church on Sunday. We've been bad. We've been sinning. The Lord has struck us down, and because we're not going to church on Sunday anymore, and we've let the world and all its riches influence us, we need to get back to the Lord in Sunday keeping, and he's going to confirm it. Yes, that's true. Let me show you how true this is. Puts up his hand, and fire comes down from heaven, and does all the miracles in front of people in this two-horned beast domain, United States, and everybody's impressed. All right, but don't forget, on the other end of the spectrum, the 144,000 is in the kingdom, setting up the loud cry gospel kingdom. All right, so even though this is going to be happening, we got the counterforce working for the Lord as well. And then, of course, the system is that he's going to be so influential, he's going to reach out, it's going to spread to the world, and the world's going to partake in the Sunday law system. And eventually the law will be made that if you don't go to church, you're not allowed to buy and sell. And then soon a death decree will happen if you're found not going to church on Sunday. So all this is prophesied to come, brethren. And so, what must you do to avoid this snag, the snare of your soul? Well, we mentioned before, you got the loud cry kingdom being set up. So let's look further at this. Now, in Revelation 14 9 to 12, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of holy angels, and the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Revelation 19:12. So the 144,000's message will be, uh, do not worship the beast and his image, or you shall be lost forever. And so we find that in Revelation 14:9, and they show that to be proof that you're not worshiping the beast in an image, what do? You keep the commandments of God, including the fourth commandment. All right? You keep the fourth commandment, which is, thou shalt keep my Sabbaths holy. This is the big drawing point of the last controversy. And then, of course, we find Revelation 18 1 to 6. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. Now, brethren, this right here is the second Pentecostal power given to the 144,000. And that is the angel, quote, angel that is lightened. In other words, it's the God's messenger that is implying here that will be given great power. And they, or he, cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, has become the habitation of devils, and the whole hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacy. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, it should say filled full to her double. Revelation 18 1 to 6. So let's look at now, come out of her, my people. So this message by the 144,000 is telling people to come out of her. What does it mean by that? All right, so we have a commentary of that. It's found in Timely Greetings, Volume 2, number 11, page 18 and 19. These verses illustrate the separation that takes place in the so-called Christian world, but mark that the angel proclaims the fall of Babylon in the time of the angel's loud cry, in the time the earth is lightened with the glory of the angel. Then it is that God's people are actually called to come out of Babylon. Moreover, for God to call his people out of Babylon on account of her sins means that he must bring them into a place where there are no sins, into his purified church, his kingdom, the place that is free from sin and that is not in danger of the plagues. Plainly, then, the purification of the church first takes place, and then are the rest of his people called out of Babylon. 2TG number 11, page 1819. So we see, brethren, that when this message goes out, they're calling them to come out of the lands that are embracing this Sunday law system. In other words, Babylon system. And they're telling them to come in to a certain land. Well, we know that's the land of the Holy Land, the land of Israel. And according to our studies, it's not going to be just the current land of Israel, but the expanded land. So that's going to include some of Jordan, some of Libya, uh, some of Egypt, and Lebanon. All these different areas are going to be included in the premillennial kingdom. In other words, we are told that many, many hundreds of millions will come into this kingdom. And to have that many people, obviously, it's going to have to be a little bigger to settle everybody than just the current land of Israel. So just keep that in mind. Now, the just to confirm, the area that's going to be called back is Israel. We read in Isaiah 2, verse 2 to 3. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills. And all nations shall flow into it, unto it. Isn't that beautiful, brethren? All nations will come into the Holy Land. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Isaiah 2, verse 2 to 3. So, brethren, we hope this has been enlightening to you. This is the conclusion of our series about the false prophet and kindred events. And may you, review this, spread it to your brethren. Particularly if you're Seventh-day Adventist, we need to get this out there to the people to warn them that time is short. We just heard that, they're sending battleships again over there in the Middle East. And remember now, Zechariah 14 war and Ezekiel 9 are prophesied to come in the very close proximity of time. So just keep that in prayer. And like I said, spread this message to other SDA. They need to hear this. So until next time, may the Lord continue to guide you into all truth. Amen.